Hi, today we're going to build an AI search capability that searches your email, whether it's 5,000 or 500,000 emails, and provides you contextually relevant responses back. Because let's face it, email search has been broken for a long time, and there's a lot of information in our emails that we want to be able to access, but we don't have a great way of doing so just based on how email search works today. So today we're going to go ahead and break down how to actually build that AI search capability using a chatbot and what that all looks like. So let's go ahead and get into it. So as a preview, this is what the chatbot will look like that we'll be building by the end of this video. This chatbot should work similar to something like a ChatGPT, where essentially you can go ahead and ask about contents of your email, and it will provide you responses back that are contextually relevant based on what you're asking about. That could be about a specific sender, that could be about a thread of messages, that could be about a topic of emails. Whatever it may be, it'll go ahead and do it and perform a similarity search across your email and the contents that exist within your emails and provide you back a response based on what's in there. There's a bunch of reasons for why this is useful, and we'll go ahead and jump into it in a little bit. But I just wanted to go over kind of what this looks like so you have an idea of what you're signing up for and kind of what we'll be working towards in this video. So here's what you can expect. So we'll go ahead and we'll do a live demo of how this all works. I've pre-built out both no-code and code-based workflows. The no-code workflows are an n8n, so I'll go ahead and I will be providing those in a link in the video so you can download them at the end. But basically, the workflows will cover both the ingestion component, so getting the emails out of your email account, whether that's Office 365, Google Mail, really could be anything, and then actually going and creating the embedding and using those emails in a chatbot capacity so you can go ahead and interface with those based on, again, the contents of your own email. We'll do some hands-on implementation to show you what goes into all of this and the different steps that need to be taken or different avenues that are available to you to be able to do this yourself, and then go over some real-world business applications as well for why this may matter and how this could be helpful to you. As a quick aside, I'm Hunter Sneed. I've created Getting Automated to provide small and medium-sized businesses resources on how to actually leverage the power of automation in their businesses, whether you're an owner or an employee, to really kind of increase the overall efficiency of the business and also drive revenue at times. And so these resources are free to access, and I create videos regularly that go ahead and break out different use cases and how to actually build them and set them up and provide the resources to be able to have you go and actually do that yourself if you'd like to. That said, I do have an automation consultancy called Workflows that goes and actually builds out the automations for customers that don't want to go ahead and actually build them out themselves. Okay, so let's address the challenge statement for what we're trying to actually solve for here. So I think it's pretty commonplace that just about everyone is inundated by emails. And whether or not those emails are relevant, there's just a lot of volume of emails as a whole that are coming through. And so essentially, the average employee receives 120 emails per day. And again, that's just an average. Could be way higher, could be way lower, depending on what you do and kind of your overall line of work. And so what typically happens is a lot of content that's valuable to not only you, but rather the business, gets lost in those emails. And finding that content, especially in a quick and kind of intuitive way, is not always easy to do. And so what we're trying to solve for today is, again, using AI search via a chatbot to go ahead and create your own database of your emails and be able to provide you a way to actually search against those emails. So that way you always have an easy way to pull up relevant data, whether it's an email from yesterday or 2 years ago, it doesn't matter. As long as it's stored within that database, you'll be able to have easy recall and be able to really kind of look at the contents of the email and what you were trying to ultimately find with it. So there's a couple different things kind of as the mission for today, one of them being understanding how AI email search works. There's some components that go into it and different pieces that make this whole thing possible. So I'll cover those at a high level and kind of give you a breakdown on the role that each plays and why they're important. Then from there, we'll also look at building out your own AI email search system and the different resources that I provide to be able to do that. And then talk about, again, how that empowers not only you, but also your team to be able to use email in a more transformational way for your actual organization. So the autonomy of this kind of what is called a RAG AI email search chatbot, I know it's a mouthful, is a couple different components. And so really kind of what you have to focus on in this sequential order is email processing and extraction. So you have a bunch of emails, God knows how many, maybe it's like 1,000, maybe it's 100,000, could be more, could be less. But basically you have to go and extract those emails. And so what you need to do is find a way to get each email as an individual file that then you can go and pass into a database that contains all of those emails. And so there's different ways to go about it. I've provided a couple different ways in the video today, but essentially you want to go ahead and extract those emails out. So that way you're able to then go and put them into a database that is searchable with your AI chatbot. And so I talked about how this is a RAG chatbot. And basically what RAG is in the AI world, there's this pattern or concept called Retrieval Augmented Generation. And so basically what it does is when you go ahead and ask a question in a chatbot, it's going to go ahead and take your query that you sent, basically saying, hey, who's emailed me about this, or what recent interactions have I had from so-and-so? And it's going to go ahead and perform a search against the database, and it's going to see if there's any emails or any context within that database that's relevant to your specific search. And it's going to return that as context to your original query. And so what this allows you to do, or what this allows more generally the chatbot to do, is it allows the chatbot to go ahead and include those contextually relevant results from your database in the actual output message that you get back. And so this is a very common strategy that people are using today to integrate their own data, their own business data specifically, with a chatbot, specifically a large language model, whether that be OpenAI, whether that be Anthropic, whether that be Meta's Llama, really doesn't matter. They all have this capability to be able to go and take that context, have it passed in, and then actually go ahead and use that in your response so you get more contextually relevant responses back, not just some generalized answer like you would if you were to go and ask ChatGPT to say, hey, what emails do I have from so-and-so? ChatGPT doesn't have access to your email. It doesn't have access to any sort of underlying database, so it wouldn't really be able to help you there. So anyway, that's what a Retrieval Augmented Generation pattern is. So why I bring that up is we're on the topic of embeddings now. So embeddings are basically a mathematical representation of a specific document or piece of data that you have. So in our case, we've got a bunch of email files. And so those email files, basically what we're going to want to do is create an embedding for each email. And that embedding is, again, a list of numbers that basically represent that data that is easily searchable by a computer to go ahead and say, hey, based on your initial query, these are emails that are contextually relevant. There's a lot of math that goes into this, and I won't dive into that and kind of the inner workings of embeddings, but know that embeddings are basically what you create from your data that then is used to go ahead and allow for search against that underlying data. And what you do is you create these embeddings, and then you store the embedding in a vector database. And so what a vector database is a vector database is basically a specific type of database. So there's different types of databases. There's graph databases, there's relational databases, there's vector databases. There's all these different types of databases for different use cases. And so in our case, when it comes to embeddings, the most common that you'll typically use is some sort of vector database. And so we'll be using a vector database today to go ahead and actually store those embeddings, which are really just, again, a mathematical representation of our actual files or of our actual email files, and store them in that so that way we can search against it. And then last but not least, we've got the chatbot interface. And basically what that is that's a pretty little interface, typically a website or some sort of web tool that uses a large language model. Again, OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, there's a bunch of them out there that you can use. But basically that chatbot interface is a way for you to go and actually interface with your data and make a request, and then have the results returned back to you. So again, we'll go ahead and we'll get into all that today and how to set that up. It's actually not as difficult as you think, and kind of what that looks like as an end product with a demo that actually shows it all in the works and what that looks like. All right, so there are a couple kind of prerequisite steps for these core components and what we need to do to get this all set up. And so there's a couple things that we need to do. One of them being that we need to go ahead and actually aggregate our emails. And so I was talking about that in the previous slide, where we need to go and get all the emails in one place. It doesn't really matter if you have a couple emails in one folder here or a couple emails in one folder here. That really isn't that helpful. We want, in most cases, all the emails, or at least all the emails that are relevant. And so maybe that means that you specifically have a way of filtering out promotional emails. So that could be any sort of like spam newsletters or ads or anything like that that you typically get enrolled in when you actually sign up for any sort of online shopping or any sort of e-commerce. And so you'll aggregate all your emails. And again, there's a couple different ways to go about that, whether that's n8n or a code-based approach. You'll go ahead and aggregate those. Then from there, what you'll do is you will set up your vector database. And so this database is basically, again, where you're storing your emails after they've been embedded to actually go ahead and do that, to be stored within the vector database. And so there's a couple different ways and a couple different database sources to do this. For today's video, I'm going to be using a database engine called PG Vector. That said, you can use a bunch of them. There's a lot of kind of open source ones that are available, as well as solutions that are a little bit easier to get started with, such as something like a Pinecone or Supabase that have vector database solutions that you can go ahead and use right out of the box. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll do some email processing. So that's basically extracting information from each email. That could be stuff like who it's to, or who the email was to, who it's from, when it was sent, the subject, the body, really kind of any metadata about the email that's going to be helpful for actually going ahead and then saving that in the vector database. The reason the metadata is important is those are all different things that we can filter against. And so if you do some filtering up front before you actually make a search, you're searching against a smaller subset of data. And the reason that is helpful is that you have a higher chance of getting more contextually relevant results. If you say, I want to see emails about, say, a specific tool, Shopify or something like that. Well, if there's a specific guru or a specific source that you like that provides you or sends you emails about Shopify, you may want to filter it to just that specific email address and then see, what emails are contextually relevant based on that query just from that specific sender or just within the last month or so. And so with the email processing and the metadata that we include with each email, we're able to get more granular with our search results, which is going to give us our search requests, which is going to give us a better search result in turn. And then the chatbot interface, I'm using a tool called Streamlit today. There's a bunch of different tools out there. Streamlit's free, it's open source, it's built on Python. It's a fantastic tool. And so that is something that I will go over today, but know that you're not limited to just Streamlit. There's a bunch of other tools out there that provide similar functionality based on your specific use case. All right, so let's put it all together and kind of connect the dots. And let me see if I can actually zoom in on this a little bit. Okay, so I know this will sound like a mouthful of a sentence, but essentially what's happening is we're going to extract emails from our email provider. Then we're going to use the individual contents of those emails to create an embedding per email that we then store in a vector database that is accessed from a chatbot interface that allows us to search the contents of our emails via the vector database. And so this chart here is intended to try and break that down and kind of show how all these different pieces connect together. When I say emails from Office 365, that's just a provider in my case, but it could be any provider. And so basically you're pulling the emails down, you're doing the processing. That's where we're extracting information like the body, the metadata. So who sent it, when it was sent, the subject, stuff like that you may care about depending on what you're actually trying to query. You create the embeddings that are stored in the vector database. And then when you go and actually make a query, a similarity search is provided, or a similarity search is performed based on your query with a relevant answer received, and then the query is going to be processed. And so it goes user query, the similarity search, query is processed, and then ultimately it makes its way back to you. And so that's kind of all the pieces at a high level and how they connect together and kind of why you should care about them as they stand today. So I've talked about both no code and low code in this, as well as code. And I want to address kind of an elephant in the room with this specific solution and why I chose to go with a more code-based solution over a no code-based solution. So in my experience, for something like data ingestion, Something like an n8n and make.com, a Zapier, they struggle a little bit with it. And the reason being is you're really performing an operation at scale. And so, for instance, with these emails, if you're having to go and extract metadata from 100,000 emails, that can be 100,000 operations minimum. And so where that becomes an issue is, while you can self-host something like n8n and not have to worry about operations, if you're paying for the hosted version of Make or Zapier or some of these other tools that charge by active operation or have timeouts for how long a specific job can run for or workflow can run for, that's going to prove to be a problem for you, because essentially what's happening is you're having to then, again, run an operation for each email. And so while you can use n8n and these other tools at a small scale to do this, I typically recommend for specifically the data ingestion component of this, that a code-based approach may make more sense. And then if you want to build out the chatbot, once your data is already in your vector database, you could do that. Or what you could do is you could use something like n8n, Makes, really any of them, to actually go and process emails after the initial load. And so maybe you do the initial load as code, and then when you actually go ahead and want to continue to add net new emails to the vector database over time, beyond that kind of first load, you could go ahead and use a low-code, no-code tool that would be able to handle whether it's 100, 200, 300 messages a day, where it's not that big of a deal and there's not as many operations happening regularly, and have that kind of be the maintenance loader, or have that be something that's continually adding to the actual vector database. So I'll go ahead and we'll jump into the actual workflows in a second, but I just wanted to preview them here. So we've got two different workflows. Of course, the text is not aligning how I had it before, but basically on this left-hand side, we've got the workflow for actually going and creating the embeddings. So again, that's taking data from your actual email, parsing some of that out, putting it into a vector database. And so that way it's all stored. And then you have your querying tool as well. And so these are both using n8n, where you're actually going and making a search against your data within n8n and being able to then go and actually see kind of what that consists of. So we've also got a GitHub repo that has the code-based approach. This is open source. You're welcome to fork it and do whatever you want to with it to adapt it as you see fit. But yeah, I will go ahead and be sharing both of those as links within the actual document, within the actual video, so you can go ahead and reference those as you see fit. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the demo and kind of what to expect. We're going to go ahead and we're going to show what it looks like to search these emails, how that works, what kind of results you can expect, the insights you can extract, and kind of how the automation works for this. All right, so again, we've got the email ingestion here. And so right now I just have it as a manual trigger within n8n, but you could do it a number of different ways. You could have it where it's a scheduled task, or there's something that triggers it. I probably wouldn't have it trigger every single time an email comes in, but up to you. I'd probably do some sort of batch job. Maybe it's every hour, every day, whatever, something to kind of keep up with it versus doing, again, kind of on demand, or not on demand, but on a trigger per email. And so just kind of breaking down what happens here. So basically what we do is we go ahead and we connect an Outlook account here. You could do the same thing with Gmail. You could do the same thing with any other email provider that n8n supports. I'm using the get many operation. And then what I'm doing is I'm actually doing a filter. So I'm only pulling in the emails from the last day or so. So not that many emails. Because again, it tends to hang when you do more than, I don't know, a couple hundred emails at a time. And so my focus has been around not doing that, but rather trying to have this be kind of more of a maintenance tool. And so then from there, what I'm doing is I'm taking the results I got from that payload and the previous request, and actually let me go ahead and hop into a prior execution. It decides to load. All right, so let me hop into a prior execution. So what we're doing here is we're going ahead and we're setting the payload. And so basically what that is mapping the data on the left-hand side of that specific email to the actual payload. And so what we've got here is we've got the message ID, the receive date, the subject, from, to, body, all of that, that I want to go ahead and pass into my vector database. So then I can go ahead and key and query on some of these things. So we've got that. And then from there, we're connecting into Postgres. And so essentially what Postgres does is Postgres is, again, the database where these embeddings are being stored within. And so it will go ahead and look at each of these messages. It'll split it up into what's called chunks. And that way it's easier to go ahead and actually receive the underlying or retrieve the underlying data in those emails. And so it goes ahead and it splits these up into chunks. And then it actually goes and stores that in the vector database. And so we've got that. And then what we've got is we've actually got an email search as well. And so what we can do here is within the email search, basically it's a chat-based interface within n8n. You could go ahead and you could have your own interface that interfaces with n8n if you wanted to. It doesn't have to live within n8n, but n8n does provide one out of the box as a starting point. And then what you can do is you can go ahead and actually search for emails from that. And so let me go ahead and maybe I'll ask about what emails I've gotten from a specific provider or something. So what emails have I gotten from Beehive lately? And so it goes ahead and performs the search. And it says, I've been receiving emails from Beehive, specifically from Tyler at Beehive. If I want to know the specific contents or questions, I can go ahead and ask a question. And so it will go ahead and pull that. And if we actually follow down the chain, we can see where it provides back different responses. And so it's pulling up different emails from Beehive and kind of what that all looks like. And we can go ahead, and this is actually the response of the vector database with the embeddings. Again, a bunch of numbers that represent actual like similarity between the content that you embedded within your vector database and the content that exists within the query, and that's how it finds it. And then from there, it actually provides back the content that I've gotten. So it talks about my daily growth email that I get every day from Beehive. And so it listed a couple of these different emails from them. Most of my emails lately have been from daily growth ones from Beehive, or have been about specific, newsletter ask emails from Beehive, the newsletter service. And so you can go back and forth and ask all sorts of questions, and it'll go ahead, and as long as there's context in your email about that, it'll provide you relevant answers back. And so this is how it looks like in n8n. Let me go ahead and I will flip to what it looks like within Streamlit. So again, Streamlit's kind of, it's a library within Python that you can go ahead and use to build out kind of data-oriented apps really quickly. It's fantastic. I can't say enough great things about it. And so this will work in a similar way. Note that this is a little bit more robust in what you can do. I've got options around different model providers as well as the underlying model. I've got metadata filters in here. I mean, all sorts of different things that make it a little bit more accessible for me to actually go ahead and really filter in on what I want. And so, again, just a different option, but one that I tend to prefer. And so I can ask a similar query. So I can ask, can you tell me about emails I've received from Starter Story? If you don't know what Starter Story is, it's a great kind of case study-based website and community for entrepreneurs that are looking to go ahead and actually start a business, or looking to kind of research about existing business models that work and kind of what can be learned about those different founders. So I'll go ahead and I'll type that in. It'll go ahead and query it. And in a second, I'll show you a similar output where it'll show me the actual output that I got from it. So it's saying, hey, based on the email content, we've got several different types of emails, logins, promotionals, upgrade options, community engagement, and unsubscription stuff. So if I go into here, I can see the actual emails. And so Pat is the owner over at Starter Story, and he sends out emails pretty regularly. And it'll show you the, again, who it's from, the subject, the date, and then content as well, if you wanted to go and actually see the specific content of that email. And so this is really great. And it, again, provides me a way to search that is not quite so focused as just from Pat at Starter Story, but rather kind of more so around the contents and what exists. And that's something, again, that at least within Outlook today and Office 365 feels really lacking. And so I wanted to go ahead and build this out and kind of show you what this would look like. Under the hood, I wanted to kind of show briefly kind of how this all works and kind of the resources that are available. So I'd already went over n8n and the templates there. I will go ahead and be sharing those out. But I also have, again, a code-driven approach for what this all looks like that talks about the different components where we actually go and download the emails, we parse the emails out, we go and we create a front-end application, we build all the infrastructure, such as the database within AWS to do this. Again, RDS with PG Vector, if that means nothing to you, that's all right. That's a little bit more of an advanced way of doing this. If you're just getting started, something like maybe Pinecone or Supabase may be a better option for you. They're easier to set up, easier to get started with, and still provide you much of the same, if not exactly the same capability that something like PG Vector provides you as a vector database provider. And so, again, we'll be sharing all of this, but wanted to kind of show you how this all works. So if we go ahead and we flip back, we've talked about how to search emails and extract the insights. What's cool about this is it doesn't have to be a chatbot. What it could be is you could create workflows where you're actually querying for specific results on a regular basis and creating reports from them. It could be around analyzing a sentiment from different people or different customers or leads that you may have and say, hey, based on the recent email threads that I've had with this person, are they interested? Does it seem like their tone conveys something that is of interest? Really kind of the possibilities are endless with this. There's a use case around maybe there's some sort of lawyer that needs to be able to go through a large amount of emails and actually get a result out quickly and easily. This could be another use case that could work for, where you're able to quickly kind of find the quote unquote needle in the haystack using an approach like this. And so again, these are all kind of different use cases that piggyback off of this as the foundation that you can build additional functionality around. So again, I just kind of touched on some of the real world use cases, whether it's customer service, sales intelligence. I mean, it could be something too where you want to go and actually evaluate the quality of responses from employees or interns or people that are in training. You could go ahead and have it do that. And so the kind of outcomes are pretty endless with this of what applications you could find that make sense. But really, all of the prerequisite steps are around getting the data into a vector database so you can actually search it in a meaningful way. And that's what matters from the get-go. And that's kind of what we're trying to address today as a starting point. So you're probably asking, all right, great, but what does this cost? And that's a great question. I have some great news for you. The cost is actually pretty minimal for this. I'm estimating on the higher side of things. That said, this could definitely be way more cost effective depending on the overall volume of data that you have and what you're trying to work with. And so with this, I'm using, again, AWS RDS Postgres, which is my database or my vector database specifically in this case. You don't need to use that. You can use something like Pinecone, Supabase. Again, there's other alternatives as well. Quadrant as well is another one that's pretty big right now. And so something like that is costing me between $15 and $25 a month. And that's really going to be highly dependent on how much data you have and how much you're looking to actually store and do something with. Beyond that, I'm using the OpenAI API. There is a cost per embedding. It's very, very small. And then there is a cost also for the actual queries that you're making. And so it's all about how much content you're passing in or context specifically. And so all these LLM providers, they basically provide pricing in terms of the number of tokens that you're consuming. Really what you need to know is it's pretty cost effective. Even if you were doing like 100,000 emails, in most cases, that would still only be between $12 and $20 a month, even with queries. And I've mentioned 3.5 here. Really, 3.5 is not really even that in use anymore. I would say that's more so representative of 4.0 usage, and with how much 4.0 has dropped in price, again, would still fit within that price range. Um, Anthropic, if you want to use that, that's a different option. I wanted to list that there. And then data transfer, again, this is AWS specific. I wouldn't worry about this. Really kind of your two main core costs are your cost to actually run the database, which the pricing will vary depending on the provider that you choose and how much data you have. And then the embedding, so creating the embeddings to input your data in and querying. And then somewhere to actually host your chatbot. Again, whether if you're using something like Streamlit, that's completely free. Where you host it will vary for you, but there's options for where you can do that or how you can do that in a cost-effective way. So I estimate 33 to 65. Again, if you really wanted to and you didn't have that much data, you could probably do this all for less than $20 a month. And so you have some options on how you actually want to do this. But yeah, again, pretty cost-effective. All right, so how do you actually make this your own? There's a lot of different ways. That could be customizing the interface. That could be, again, filtering out specific types of emails, having kind of different segmentation of emails depending on what you're trying to search against or search for. That could be adding different data sources. This is not just limited to emails. You could add in data from a CRM, so something like a HubSpot, a Salesforce, anything like that. You could add in data from other sorts of internal company documents that you may have that may be relevant that you want to search against. Really, a vector database can handle all these different types of data types. It just depends on how you actually go about creating the embeddings and doing something with, putting those in the actual vector database. And so this is, again, a foundational kind of jumping off piece where you start with it and take it and run with it. But yeah, and then the automation of workflows, we've talked about different use cases that you could build workflows around, whether it's reporting, whether it's automation based off of contents of emails. There's really a lot of options that you can go ahead and kind of take and run with based on what your goals are. So how do you get started? It's a great question. And really with this, the best way to get started is to go ahead and either download the workflow files or clone the repository that I provide and follow the setup instructions. They should be pretty straightforward. I really try and make sure that the README, especially on the code side of things, is pretty up to date, pretty straightforward. There may be modifications needed based on your email provider, as well as setting up different credentials to actually authenticate as you as a user. But as a whole, should be, again, relatively straightforward. Then you can customize it for your needs. If you want to do something differently, better, worse, indifferent, go for it. Again, it's all available for you to use and for you to benefit from. And even if you just look at it as kind of a starting point to understand how this all works, in my book, that is absolutely a win. And so we've got a couple of those steps that you can go through, and depending on kind of your level of interest, feel free to go ahead and have at it. So some closing thoughts are, I really think this is a powerful automation and tool and use case that I haven't really seen done much. And it was something that I was personally struggling with myself, where I couldn't find the information I wanted in emails when I wanted to. And so there's a lot of times where I may be creating a proposal and want to go ahead and look back on prior proposal content or look back on pricing that I did for a similar project. And so this allows you a way to actually do that in a scalable manner once you get it all set up, and will be something that could be a part of your everyday kind of tool chain and workflows that you use going forward based on kind of what you're trying to find and how much you're actually using email within your actual line of business. Okay, so this is a big announcement. I'm pretty stoked about this, and I will go ahead and talk to you about this and then go ahead and close the video out. But one of the pieces of feedback that I've been hearing is that people watch these videos and sometimes they're left wanting more. And so while I try and have these videos be really kind of informational and talk about how this all works and give you the overview, I've found that YouTube is not very friendly for super, super long format content. We're talking over 30, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe multiple hours. And so at least in my own experience, I think that there are gaps in what I'm talking about and kind of how deep I want to go with some of this. But I'm not able to really do it on YouTube because I don't think it's the right place for it. I think it will negatively impact the overall channel growth and kind of channel progress that I'm really working hard to kind of continue to maintain and grow. And so what I'd like to do is create a community, and that's what I have built this out for, is to have a community of serious automators. This is not a get rich quick community. This is not a here's how to make your first $10,000 with AI in 30 days. This is for people that want to go and actually roll their sleeves up and learn about automation and build, and really kind of are passionate about the blend of tech and business and how to kind of drive efficiency with that. And so I'm creating a circle.so community. Right now, there is a wait list or kind of pre-registration list for that. Let me go ahead and flip over to that right now. And so it's on my website. It's in the nav bar. Again, I will link this as well within the video description. But I'm just looking to try and gauge interest of who's all interested. I'm looking to cap this at 250 members. And so I want to make sure that the quality stays really high and that there's not too many members that I can't go and actually personally contribute and get to know every single person in this. And so I'm capping it at 250 members, but wanted to put it out there. If this is something that's interesting to you, please go ahead and sign up here so I can go ahead and kind of gauge interest. And when it's ready to actually launch, you will be the first to be invited. And that way we'll go ahead and kind of have a community that doesn't start with 1 to 5 people to start with, but rather a broader group of people to start with that are interested, that want to all kind of collaborate and come together for this. So hopefully this is as exciting to you as it is for me, but it's something that, again, I'm really looking forward to. And I think there's a lot of kind of great value that I can provide through this beyond just providing a place for people to gather, but rather a lot of resources, courses, all sorts of stuff that will kind of help educate and accelerate people's adoption of AI automation as a whole. And so, yeah, looking forward to it. So thank you for watching. As always, liking, sharing, subscribing, all of that means the world to me. It really helps the kind of channel grow and justify me continuing to put more time into this and kind of see the feedback over time. So if this is interesting, please go ahead and do that. Again, really helps me a ton. And then, as always, if you want to go ahead and get in touch with me, please don't hesitate to do that. You can reach me by email at hunter@gettingautomated.com, as well as I also have a newsletter that I just started in the last week or so that covers kind of cool things that I'm seeing within automation, whether that's tools, tricks, recent releases of videos, all sorts of stuff. So please go ahead, if that's of interest, sign up for the newsletter, as well as, again, make sure to follow and subscribe and ring the bell and all of that on YouTube. So thank you so much. Again, hopefully this helps. If there's any questions, again, please feel free to reach out. Always happy to help. But in the meantime, have a great time automating, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.